In this video, I'm going to show you the most common questions that are asked in kitchen helper interviews and help you plan great answers that are going to help you get a job working there. So let's start with the most common question, which is extremely important to get right, and that is simply what times can you work? And they are looking for someone that actually meets their needs. So the first and most important thing you have to do is show that you actually meet the company's needs. If you own this kitchen, if you own this restaurant, for example, what times would you actually want staff to work? And if you're not saying those times, they're probably not going to hire you. The next thing you want to do is show flexibility. You want to be really flexible and really open minded about a wide range of times. The more flexibility you can show, the better your chance of getting the job are. The next thing you want to do is say yes as much as possible. If they ask about a certain time, if they say, can you work at this time, there is a reason why they are asking. They are asking it because that is a time that they have in mind. That is a time that they need someone and they are looking to hire people that can work at those times. So say yes as much as you can. Let's look now at some great phrases that you can use in your interview that really help convey and show the right things. So good answers for a kitchen helper would be things like, I can work flexibly around the full range of your opening hours. That really is one of the best answers you can give. You could say, I'm happy to work at your peak times, which I understand to be evenings and weekends. So typically people go out to eat during the evening and at the weekend much more. So a lot of businesses, not all, will actually be looking to hire people to work more towards those times. You can say, I'm open to overtime. They may never offer overtime, but just saying that you're open to it helps show some flexibility. And you can also say things like, I can usually work at short notice when needed. Again, hopefully you wouldn't have to work at short notice, but it's a good thing to volunteer. So there's another thing. So that's how you really ace this question. The next question you want to be prepared for is a simple one, which is, tell me about yourself. And typically this will be asked at the beginning of the interview. And it's a good opportunity for you to show the right things and show that you've got the right skills. So the three things you want to talk about is, firstly, your past experience, then your qualities and some skills that they might be interested in, and then why did you apply and why is this the right job for you. So start by listing your work experience. So when they ask you to tell them about yourself, one of the most important things to get in there is any experience that you have. That may be work, but also you can have experience outside of work that could be relevant, particularly if that was to do with study and learning about the job. So any qualifications that you have done, that could be food safety qualifications, that could be training for this role, or even at school if you did some courses that were relevant to food preparation, that's a good thing to talk about. And when you're explaining about your work experience, say what you learned. And it doesn't just have to be kitchen focused roles. You might have worked as, say, a waiter or a waitress. And that's great experience. You've been working with customers, you've been working with other people, you've learned a bit more about how a restaurant actually operates, you've seen it from the other side. That is a really great experience to bring to this role. Some qualities that they quite like to hear about is that you're reliable. That's extremely important in running an efficient kitchen. That you're friendly, someone that they can get on with, that you're a team player because you're a kitchen helper. You are there to help the kitchen actually function properly. So you've got to be good at teamwork. And if you're passionate about food, that is definitely something that will help you get the job. And if you can talk confidently about that, that's great. Then, when you're rounding off your answer, actually explain why this is the right job for you. So, say things like you love working in a kitchen if you've got experience that. Be really positive about it. Talk about your long term ambitions. Are you looking in the long term to become a chef? So, they may be hiring you just starting out in your career as a kitchen helper, and you may be explaining that longer term you want to learn, develop, and contribute in different ways and move up in the organization. You could say that you're eager to learn. That's a really good attribute to have. And then one thing you want to think about is, why have you applied here? Why at this particular location? And say one or two things that you like about this company or what they do. And that's a really great way to round it off. So basically, talk about your experience, talk about the skills that they are looking for, and then explain why this is the right job for you and be really enthusiastic in your answer, and you will fly through this question. The next question that often comes up is, do you have reliable transportation? And you want to really convince them that getting there is not going to be a problem and emphasize that you're going to be reliable. People just say things like yes and don't really elaborate. Let's have a great answer to this. So you may have your own transport, you may look at walking to work, or you may look at using public transport. And depending on what your transportation is, you're going to have a different answer. So if you say you've got your own transport, you want to say that you've got your own car. Also say that your car is reliable if it is, and that it's an easy commute. You're not going to get stuck in lots of traffic. It's not a huge distance, for example. Explain that this is a very easy commute and you're very confident that you'll be able to always be there on time. If you are walking, emphasize that it's a very easy walk, or you could say that you could cycle it if that's what you intend to do. And be very clear about the fact that it's very easy to get here, that I'll always be on time. It's not very far away. It's perfect for me. If you do use public transport, there's certain ways that you want to answer this. They may be concerned about, well, maybe you're going to be late. Public transport maybe not so reliable. How do we get around that? You say you take the earlier bus or train. So you appreciate that sometimes public transport is delayed. It's not always on time, but I'm going to be taking one that's going to get me in half an hour early. And if I was to miss that first one, I've got a second option that can get me there in time. If the first train was cancelled, the next train that comes along will still get me there in time. That's a great thing to bring to your interview. Make sure you've researched the route and you understand exactly how to get there before you go to your interview, and talk about a plan B. So if, for example, the public transport wasn't running that day, or it had been cancelled, or there was major disruption, you can say something like, I do have friends and family members who, in that situation, would be able to offer transportation to work to ensure that I get there on time, as I always aim to do. So any way that you answer this has got to show that you care about being on time, and that they don't really need to have any worry about you being able to get there and be reliable. Let's now look at another question that's very important to answer right, which is, how soon can you start? They may be asking this because they're really interested in hiring you, or it may just be a standard question so that can help them understand who to hire. There's two ways that you can answer this. Really, your hands are tied with this question. You can't just say whatever you want or what you have to say to get the job. You have to actually give the truthful answer, because if you are offered it and you've answered it wrong, they may withdraw the offer. So the first way is to say, I'd be able to start at your earliest convenience. So that means that you could basically start whenever they're ready for you. Or if that's not the case, what you say is, if successful, I would be able to start immediately after completing my notice period, which is, and tell them how long you would have to work for your current employer before you can move. That is well understood. If they've invited you to interview knowing you have another job, they will know that there's a certain notice period, so it will not be a surprise to them, but they would like to know that, and that is the honest answer. So pick the one that matches what you can say. If you do have a job, work out what the notice period is, and you're going to have that ready for your interview. The next question that you could be asked is, are you able to work evenings and weekends? And there is a simple answer to this, which is basically just to say yes, because that is really the right answer. If you do choose to say no, understand that that may reduce your chance of getting the job, because the key thing to remember is they ask this for a reason. If they're asking, can you work evenings and weekends, it's often a screening question, which is, we won't hire people that can't work those times, because that's exactly the time that we need. And so if you're not meeting the times that they actually need staff, then it's going to make it much harder for you to get the job. You can say no, but it will hurt your chance of getting it. And they've asked this for a reason. If they weren't bothered, they probably wouldn't have asked it. The next question is, what work experience do you have? And don't waste this opportunity. Make sure you really show off the brilliant work experience that you've got. Or if you've not got work experience because you're very early in your career, focus on telling them about all the training and learning that you've done. What they're really looking for is to check that you've got the right skills, that there's no negatives. They may dig into parts of your work history to try and see if they can uncover anything not great, because that will help inform their decision. And you want to be careful in how you answer this and be ready for follow-up questions. And really, if you've got the right skills and they can't find anything that's negative in your work history, then you're going to be a great hire. One top tip for the negatives is never say anything bad about a former employer ever. It's one of the worst things you can do in an interview. So let's look at how you answer this. Give your full job title. So don't just say a simple job title. Say what your actual proper formal job title is. Then say what your exact role was and your responsibilities. Don't just tell them what the job title is. Actually explain what you did, because when you're explaining your actual responsibilities and what the role involves, you're showing off more skills and you're showing off more experience. Then talk about what you learned when you're working there and the skills. So if you've worked as a kitchen helper somewhere else and you work with a really brilliant chef that really mentored you, talk about that. Talk about all the things that you learned there. Talk about all the training that you got. Did you shadow someone, for example? All these things are really great to bring into the job interview. And also, if you have experience in other roles completely outside of working in a kitchen, you've still picked up useful and valuable experience that you can talk about. You want to have a reason for leaving. So if this is a job that you're moving to, having left previous jobs, of course, if you've had multiple jobs in your career, you will have left. They may ask, why did you leave that job? And you want to have a good, positive reason ready. Was it a relocation, for example? Why did you actually move? Did you get a better job? And talk about the positives of this job as a reason why you want to move from your previous employer to this particular job, and never ever say anything negative about any employer or any manager you've worked with. And then you always link your experience to the job. So if you've got a previous role, say how that job is going to make you better at doing this job. So tips for success: prove that you can actually do the job, and that if they hire you, you can actually do the job effectively, and that you're going to be a good addition to the team. That if they take you on, their team's going to be stronger. And that's how you pass this one. You'll probably ask some questions around food safety. This is really just checking whether you have the basic knowledge. And so you're going to definitely have to prepare for this. So let's look at generally how you can answer any sort of food safety question and the things that they want you to say. So the first thing for any question about food safety, you must start your answer by saying it's extremely important. It's something I take very, very seriously. And it is one of my most important things, or really the most important thing that I'm concerned about, is making sure that things are done safely. If you've got any training in food safety, any certificates or qualifications, you can bring those to the interview and know exactly what those are. Know what hygiene standards are, so you can say that there's laws that we have to follow, that there is probably going to be inspections, and we have to always be following the standards that are set down by the government or the city council or the regulators. That safe storage is one important aspect, that food has to be stored correctly in line with the rules. The preparation area should always be clean at all times. It's not acceptable to prepare food in somewhere that is not clean. That certain foods have to be kept separate. And for example, you wouldn't have raw meat and vegetables stored in the same place. Those would always be kept separate. You have to avoid cross-contamination. So for example, you wouldn't chop raw meat in one location and then take vegetables, put them on top, and chop the vegetables on top of where you've just had raw meat. That it's very important that there's no cross-contamination. That's a good phrase to use, avoiding cross-contamination and understanding that. And that food, when it goes out, should be fully cooked in line with the health and safety rules. So here's a basic overview of the sort of things that they want to hear you talking about. And if you can talk confidently about all the things on this slide, you may want to write those down as well and memorize them. Then it's going to give them some confidence that you know what you're talking about. Now, before you finish, here is some good questions that you could ask at the end of your job interview. They will, at the end, probably ask, do you have any questions for us? And if you say no, that's a very bad answer. Make sure you got something ready to ask. So you could say something like, since I am really interested in the position, I'm interested to know what the next steps in your recruitment process are. When are you going to find out? Are they interviewing other people? Again, don't ask about that. They may tell you that, but you probably want to know when the timeline is for finding out and what happens next. And it shows a bit of eagerness. You may want to say, can you tell me more about the team you have here in the kitchen and how my role fits in? So you learn about who you can be working with, show an interest in your colleagues, and understanding exactly what the job involves, and be really positive, enthusiastic, and interested in actually doing the job. You might want to ask, what opportunities can you provide to support me to learn and develop here? So if you are ambitious, if this is a stepping stone towards becoming a chef, for example, this is the time to really talk about what you can learn here, because this may be the right place for you. It may not be the right place for you. And if they can't offer you anything at all and you have other offers, you may want to consider that as well. You are interviewing them to some extent as well. Then you could say, what would you say is the best thing about working here? So find out what they like about this place, and sharing their enthusiasm is a nice, positive thing to do at the end of the interview. And then you may want to think about making up one question on the day. If there's something in the interview that you wonder about, you may want to ask about that. But certain things you don't ask about. So don't ask about transfers or moving from this location to another location. That's a really negative thing to say, because the person interviewing you is trying to staff this location, not someone else's location. The manager is responsible for this place, different manager in different place. They're going to be probably thinking about their store or their location. Don't ask about pay. It's probably not going to be very negotiable. If it is something that you can negotiate, during the interview is not the best time. You want to negotiate only after you've been offered the job, if there is any chance of negotiating. Don't ask about holidays. Don't ask about delaying the start date. The basic thing is, if you start delaying the start date, it's going to cause you problems. And don't ask about time off, because that's also the worst thing you can ask in an interview. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please like and subscribe. And finally, thank you very much for watching.